Good morning. My name is Dr. Heather Corwin. I'm here at ATHE 2017. I'm going to be moderating a discussion about how to nurture the non-traditional acting student, and the questions that we're going to be covering include: what are your best practices when teaching first-year novice and/or non-theater majors in your acting class? How do you reach the students who don't think an acting class is for them? What soft skills do you teach your acting class that is valuable in many professions? How do you approach teaching these skills to students who assume, oh, theater isn't for me, and acting has nothing to do with my major? And the last one, how do you get the students who want to step outside their comfort zone to actually step outside their comfort zone without scaring them off? So these are the questions we're going to cover. And these questions were originated by Professor Elizabeth Parks. So we will be talking about those, and I hope you find them interesting. Today is Thursday, August 2nd, 2017. Today is Thursday, August 3rd, 2017. Enjoy. So just thinking about the things that have worked best for you when you're teaching non-majors or first year, what are some of the things that you do that you have found to be successful?
I'll jump in. Sure.
Yeah, please.
I don't teach that many novice and first year students right now, but I have in the past. And I think a big thing is like keep it lively, keep it physical, keep it moving. I think that keep it fun. That's what I would say.
Yeah.
I think to know that it's about something, and I feel this way about teaching acting in general, not just to non-majors, but I think it's got to be about something. The ultimate message has to be about something beyond acting, right? There's got to be a takeaway that's about creating more informed and sensitive human beings, as opposed to just being like, this is how you act.
Yeah.
Nice.
Going taking on that, I sort of, with my non-majors, actually all of my students are non-majors, but I come from sort of a communications approach as well, talking to them about this is going to be valuable to you as a leader in your workspace or whatever it is. But I also find that using groups from the beginning and kind of making sure no one is singled out right away, because that seems to be one of the biggest concerns for my young actors.
How do you do that? How do you not single out?
I kind of going back to what you just said, start with a lot of physical work where everybody's doing it, and then sort of slowly bring people away, and there may be 2 or 3 students on stage all of a sudden engaging in some sort of scene work with an audience, and they didn't really know that it was happening.
Yeah.
So,
They're anonymous at first. In other
Yeah.
words, right?
Yeah.
There's no eyes on them singularly. It's everybody's doing it.
Nice. Yeah.
I actually experimented with something this year that really worked well, and it was mask work, which I thought was unattainable for non-majors. And they absolutely, as a matter of fact, I was just going to do it 1 week, and they were like, can we do this for another week? Can we do this for another week? And we actually did it for three weeks. So it was just really, really rudimentary, stuff, but, and they were inexpensive masks, that I just got at Party City, just the white masks. And they just, they really, the idea of clocking the audience carried on throughout the entire semester. That really was something that spoke to them, and it really gave them a physical sense, without worrying about what they were doing. They weren't worried about acting. They were just present in the space. And I think that was actually the best thing about it. It started us with that knowledge.
Do you think the idea of separating the person from the character also was a useful tool within that?
In that they were less self-conscious.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, really
because
cool.
It wasn't them.
Yeah.
They were, yes, exactly. They were able to attain that concept of character very quickly. And it was
Cool.
dissociated from themselves, so they were a little less nervous. Yeah.
Nice. Thank you.
Just
Yeah.
that, I just made that connection. Thank you.
Yeah, yeah.
I think for me, there's two different parts of the question. One is, what is the objective that we're setting? Like, it's the thing we're doing
Yeah.
together. So I always define, like, whatever the class name is blank, and then we just do words that people shout out so that we know that we can come back to on the last day of class. Like, oh, do we still think that? Has that changed? And I feel like that gives us a, like, we're going to study acting is observing or behaving or, you know, playing a character or whatever it is, and then getting into practice in ways that is pretty ensemble building. But I think it's really helped me to define what we're trying to do together, specifically with non-majors. You know, I'm not here to make you an actor, but I do want you to observe behavior, and I do want you to, you know, analyze script and things like that.
And how does that marry with the course description for you?
It's one place that I encourage them to look for potential answers if they're lost.
Nice.
So they have a syllabus that has everything that says, so acting is, and then they can look down and they can say, you know, warm up, you know, or something. And then, but we just put it all out there, and it's something that we've made together, and on the last day we go through and check it with each one.
Nice. Thank you. Did you? Yeah.
I would say that I think working in larger groups and going to smaller is really key to working with non-actors. I have found, there's a number of people in here that have done Michael Chekhov work, and I have found that ball game to be indispensable for new people. And basically it's getting in a circle and you're tossing a ball across the circle, and I use it at the beginning just for them to learn each other's names. But it is amazing that that game, by the end of my first class, everybody in my class knows everybody's name in the classroom. And that creates such a sense of community that it sets the stage for the rest of what I do in my course. And I also introduce, you know, giving and receiving, that this is what we're going to be doing, and responsibilities of, you know, that you are responsible for someone receiving, you know, if you're the giver, you know, so there's a really strong connection that is made throughout that game. And they love that game, and they want to come back to it all the time. But it accomplishes so many things.
Yeah.
So.
That's great.
Yeah.
Thank
Can
you.
I just tag on to that?
Sure.
I do it too, the first day of class, and I found it to be so successful that I now do different variations of it. So I have it last over several periods, but playing around with different variations of what you do with the ball. Because I find that we still have to return to the names a couple of times.
Yes.
And they love it so much, and you're right, especially like with non-majors, like the athletes love the game.
Oh my gosh, yeah.
So automatically they're hooked in.
Yeah, yeah,
So it's just really affirming to hear how it's working for you.
yes, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I actually have a lot of different things, not just a ball. I think the favorite thing is a teddy bear that they toss, and they come to that teddy bear, like, sits in our classroom as like the warm-up teddy bear, and I think it embraces the idea of play,
Yeah.
especially for the non-major. And it gets that concept across to them very quickly.
Yeah.
And then they know if they walk in that room, it's time to play.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, and I also want to interject that we're also now talking about how do we get to those students who are like, acting isn't for me. I'm just here for the easy grade or whatever it is.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? So I feel like inclusivity, we're also now talking about that, which is the second question. How do you reach the students who don't think acting class is for them? And we also introduced the idea of what are some of those soft skills, how do they translate into life and careers that are not acting, which is also some of the other things I want to discuss. We're naturally doing that, so I just wanted to name those things as we go along. And we're also talking about, with the mask and everything, how to encourage the students to step out of their comfort zones. So these are, I think we're just naturally talking about these things. So continuing about either exercises or ways or goals, what are some other ways that you think of to include or energize these students or engage these students? Yeah.
I started out really teaching speech and voice, and so Shakespeare was my thing. And I had students who had come into the university never having seen, except maybe like a TV movie of Shakespeare, just not hearing the language and not really being drawn to it much, which just killed me. I had to find them a path. So instead of starting with any kind of scenes, which everyone was chomping at the bit to do, I always start Shakespeare class. Yes, talking about scansion, coming up with scenes that are very dynamic as examples, and once I've gone through that, we just read them to see how it plays back and forth. The first assignment is always sonnets. So I went through all the sonnets, pulled my faves and the ones that I felt were not, clear as mud, the ones that are much more accessible. And then I asked them to set them very, very simply. So, shall I compare these to a summer's day? I'm sketching you and drawing you. Very simple setting. Shall I compare you to a summer's day? Just give it a context in which to be. And of course, you're going to be their students. My favorite. Okay. So, my boyfriend and I, we broke up, and he has AIDS. I mean, it's like a whole story of how I thought, whoa, just simplify, shave it down, just give it a very simple. If you want to have a confrontation between two people who are at odds, we could do that, but huge backstory. So we tried to get to two things. One, the simplicity of presentation, so that they could concentrate on the language, because that's really, they were in Shakespeare class, they were to learn how to access it. So I found that to be really helpful, and it's not until the second half of the semester, actually in December, before they go home for Christmas, that I would assign them scenes. So they'd have time to read the play thoroughly twice, and then start working. They had a scene partner, and they knew what they were doing.
And is that for non-majors?
No, this was for
Majors.
Majors.
Yeah.
The
Same
BFA
principles.
program, and these are 18, 19-year-olds.
Yeah.
I had a couple, like one was 36 at the time. He came from New Zealand, and a woman from China. But the majority of the class, 18, 19-year-olds.
Yeah.
With no Shakespeare experience. So I kind of think of them as the general population.
I
Nice.
throw sonnets at my students right away mostly because it's all right there in 14 lines, and there is a great the whole idea of context, I think, is great and simplifying that way. I actually do an exercise that it's kind of about context and storytelling, and it's sort of like the ball game. I mean, as a way to just, for me, to learn everyone's name. And you tell me your name, where you're from, your favorite color, and a lie about yourself.
Yeah.
And it's just but it becomes a story, and the story seems to be what and then you go around the room and everybody's supposed to repeat the whole thing. But that's the whole. But what that, just getting back to the whole idea of story and context is what just seems to work. And then you sort of talked about how do we bring it into how do we apply the skills they may be picking up in an acting class in their, a lot of my students are career and technical ed students, and it gets back to the whole communications, and I throw in leadership with them too. So because if you're a better communicator, you're going to you'll wind up being a leader, and and maybe you'll have a larger paycheck. I don't know.
Yeah.
I mean, yeah.
And build a theater with the extra.
Yeah, exactly. And be a good donor.
Yeah. When I was teaching non-majors, I would have a lot of marketing students come in, and one of the things that we talked about was, as an actor, you need to know what the other person is after. And by identifying that need, you can then help them get what they want, which helps you get what you want. So that was something that I have one student who's always like, I keep coming back to that. I mean, he's been out like 10 years and he's got a absolutely ridiculously successful career. And one of the things that he attributes that to is, I can name what they want when we walk in the room. And I'm just like, acting skills are life skills. Yeah.
Those listening skills.
Yes.
Deep listening. So, and not just listening to the talking. So
Yes.
that's how we get to how do we guess? We're not just guessing, we're listening.
Yes.
And so I start with really simple speaking and listening, and what are the students actually saying?
Yeah, nice.
I think part of it too is identifying what benefit there is to having an awareness of your body and voice, like what instrument goals are. So like if one of the things I'm trying to do in the beginning course is to get them to be aware of their instrument and just standing in neutral and all those things, why do they care? Like what value is in it for them? And it could be professional, like in a job interview or on a date or something, but like if they can put into the room how they think they might benefit from eye contact, that feels like something you can capitalize on.
Absolutely.
There's some great research now too. There's a book called Insight that came out last year about self-awareness, insight. And there's also a book called Blind Spot. And these are great tools that I will actually pull just a chapter out of for them to read, or maybe just a few paragraphs, because it gives them, it's not the acting teacher espousing to these things. It's like, this is an expert. Like, look at what this expert says. But it does give them
a real person,
real
not
life
an actor.
expert.
Yeah.
Well, and they're looking for that real life thing. So whenever I can tie that in for them, particularly if they're the non-traditional, theater student, then it gives them a language or a vocabulary that they feel like is a little more close to their experience. But when you talked about listening, I thought immediately, one of the things that, and I did it a few years ago, I haven't done it since because I haven't had the opportunity, but long-form improv has become really popular, and everybody loves Modern Family, and the writers of Modern Family are all, UCB grads and come out of these like long-form traditions. And so there's a building block game called Who, What, Where. That's a simple exchange, and in the exchange, it's two people. Each person talks once, and then one person, the final respondent. So A talks twice. A introduces
like
something.
3-line scene.
It's like a 3-line scene, and they call it Who, What, Where, and UCB tradition. But it requires listening. And because they love Modern Family and they love this new single camera comedy on television, this half-hour comedy, they really love that it's relatable. It's something they can do that's like, well, this is just like Modern Family, or this is just like this other thing I love, or this group I watch on YouTube. So I find that it immediately engages them because they want to do something that they think is unique, and they saw these people on Funny or Die. So if I can give them the real world connection, they're actually more into it. But what the 3-line scene or the Who, What, Where actually reinforces is listening, storytelling, and there's an empathetic quality because it's the yes and. But I don't have to beat them over the head with the yes and. I can introduce that later, but they can find out what it means to drop the ball. So that's a great way to integrate it into students that are not our traditional acting students.
I had a question for everyone, because this goes off when you were talking about the love your lie. After I do the ball game, I do the game True or False, where the students have to come in with either a true story or a false story, or they're also allowed to have a little bit true, a little bit false, and an object. The object kind of becomes the thing that they kind of anchors them on the stage, and then each of them goes up and they do what turns out to be a quick monologue, because I said, you don't memorize anything, just plan on what you're going to talk about, but we are going to grill you and ask you questions. And then I also tell them, if you forget your object, don't let me know. I want to know only after the fact. And then they love that. They love that they're like trying to get away with something. And I've been doing this for years, and I don't even know where I got it from. But what I find with this is that some of the students who I did not get in the ball game, they like this because then they start relating to each other, because they see, oh, this person had this crazy Cancun experience, and this person met this famous person, or this person is a great storyteller. I totally believe them. And then they have, like, kind of going back to the improv reference, callbacks or reincorporation, that they then look at that person and then throughout the semester remember that story. But I found that was just another layer of hooking in some people who I didn't get right away. And I was curious if other people have worked with that exercise.
A similar thing where they write down their name, their home address, who lives there with them, what their room looks like, and they bring an object. And then they're in a circle and they pass their paper to the right and their object to the left. And so now they have two different parts of two different people's work, and they have to present it as if it's their own. And so it's a way to kind of talk about the intersection between what's real and what's imagined, and what you bring to a text and what you have to invent.
That's really cool.
Well, there's a great book I found years ago, and I still have it, but I haven't really even been able to find it online. It's called High Concept, Low Tech. And which is just a great idea. And you can do things on a budget. But one of the exercises in it is sort of like what you're saying. I tell you a story, I share a story with you, a personal story that's true, that occurred to me, and then you tell it back to the class as me. And but it's the same, so there's a lot of listening involved, and which
Well, we were channeling each other, truly, because that's the exercise that I did. This is before I actually started teaching in university. I was training managers at Merrill Lynch. So my population was OS&T, operations, services, and technology. And then later came the traders, who we won't even talk about how difficult they were to work with. But, so the OS&T group came in immediately like, okay, you got a lot of this. What do these theater people have to teach me? You know, I work at Merrill Lynch, so there was this whole thing to get over. And so what we discovered, we did this for about 2 years. We had to kind of trick them a bit, but it was exactly the same exercise which we call exhilarating incidents. We ask each person to think of an exhilarating incident in their life, unforgettable, just made an impression on them. A lot of men chose the birth of their children, you know, watching their wife give birth. Someone did water skiing for the first time, someone did jumping out of a plane, you know, like that kind of thing. It could be a terrible thing or a happy thing. Most people chose happy. But what we discovered worked. The first couple of times, we got our hands tied because we told them what the exercise was going to be, and then we began it. And in their heads, they started putting up walls against everything that we were doing because they had judged the outcome and the goal. So we started to change it by saying, just come up with an exhilarating incident, sit with your partner. Each person, tell your partner your exhilarating incident. Now tell it again. Try and use as much of the same wording as you did before. Now tell it a third time. And the goal becomes try not to deviate from the script you had before by changing it a lot so that the story is more easily repeatable and we can tell them that. Then they finish and we tell them to switch. Now, lead back your story to the other person. As you heard it 3 times, you should be able to do this. Make it your story as if it's yours. And you're, you know, we always say, pretend he's in the hospital and he can't tell his own story, so you're going to do it for him. Each step along the way, they bought into it because they thought the goal was, it was a memory exercise. But as soon as we told them the whole thing, big walls went up. Then we got to the end, and this is sort of like the midpoint. People would stand and tell the other person's story, and to the whole group as if it were theirs. And it was very successful, I thought. Then they had to come up with movement, 3 movements for their story that were like snapshot, 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 And so the other person would do the movement while they were telling the story. So the first, the water skier would be like, it's just a snapshot, and they would do that. And then we had them move into a dance where the two of them copied each other's movements. So there were all these different layers of building observational skills, listening skills, a little bit of confidence in the body. I mean, obviously we're not training actors in that case, but it all came down to not telling them what we were going to do. That's what it came down to.
Well, this brings up a question for me, because I'm always really interested in how social media can belong in an acting class. When I first started teaching, I would have students do a fake Facebook profile for their character. OBC to actually be a full
It is.
Facebook doesn't like that anymore. But I was recently with students this year, like how Snapchat and the curation of their day, and specifically like body pictures, like how you can do tableau work as like a Snapchat story. I mean, like they're like moving through their days and actually taking in their friends' days or through their Snapchat stories. So they have this idea of like, what are these important like pit stops during their day that have images and that they're named. And so that made teaching physical score like such an easier thing because they're doing it already. Like they're curating their day with images and in a way that they can do the Snapchat story of their day. Like it's a similar kind of thing, or with a story or an exhilarating event. I think that that's a way to kind of
That's terrific.
tell them that you're already doing this. We're just going to do it with your body and not your phone.
Yeah.
So I'm always curious about how to do that. Cause like, what are they doing that's a way to get to acting. We're just going to make that. We're going to embody that instead of doing it on your device.
That's really sharp. Yeah. So I also want to note that we have probably just a few minutes left. So if you have anything burning that you really want to say, yes.
Well, I need advice. What I'm finding when it comes to warm-ups, I've been finding lately that when I'm doing warm-ups, there's usually like one or two at least who do the eye rolls or at least look like they cannot stand what they're doing. And then I start getting into my head. And then I'm more focused on what that person is thinking than what it is I'm actually doing. And but what I want to ask you guys is, how do you incorporate your physical and vocal warm-ups with non-majors? Do you start it right away? Do you wait till they're more comfortable? Because sometimes when I'm doing like some of the like shaking out sound, like I don't know, they're like, oh, this is so weird. I guess. Do you know what I'm going to do?
Yeah.
I do a few warm-ups. What I really do is I simply encourage my students to work out and to be active. And a lot of my students, like I say, they're CTE students. They're doing pretty hard work in their lab classrooms anyway. And I sort of monitor when they come in. If it looks like they need a warm-up, then we do it. But I kind of expect them to be warmed up when they get there in a certain way.
One of the things that I do, particularly if I have a group that's in good shape, is that I will come to class with my sneakers on, and I'll have everybody put everything down, particularly if I have a TA who's going to stay in the room. And then if it's a group that maybe I'm losing, or maybe they're just, I'll say, catch me. And then I just take off. And I have a pad that I've already run, that I know I can run. And a lot of times it's just restoring the balance of, yeah, beat me. I invite you to. I want you to. I want you to pass me by.
I'm going to do
And I have to tell you, it equalizes everything out. I had a group that got really cranky, some sophomore BFA actors who, they knew everything and roll their eyes. And I just, one day I showed up and I was like, make sure to wear your sneakers, which isn't unusual because maybe sometimes we'll start with something more physical that requires a little different kind of support on the feet. And it shocks them. And then they kick into gear. So that is something that always, and I also, dodgeball is fantastic. So I don't play dodgeball with them, but I get the ball, but I have the ball out. And when we're working with text, I have enough balls that they have to toss the balls around, and I toss the ball to them. And sometimes I'm like, as hard as I think they can take it, because it physically wakes them up.
I play tag a lot.
Yeah.
And then I go to slow motion tag, and then we start with, moving at the speed of stillness. So then, and if that feels like it's landing, we can do like slow motion war or slow motion superhero fighting. So it's like there's no contact. So it's really beginning stuff, but they can really have fun. Like the imagination can start to grow, and they can have poison fingernails and kill someone across the room. And they love stuff like that.
I'll tell you what worked with my middle school students. Oh God, middle school students. That's all I need to say, I think.
Yeah.
Have you ever done a Union Jack? You get tape and you make a huge Union Jack on the floor with an X in the center and a cross. They have boundaries. They can only walk on the lines. They cannot walk around someone. All they can do is walk on the lines. They can run, walk, switch directions, fall down, get up, and scream. That's it. No speaking. And I have half the class watching, and the thing is, that's what happens. If they don't respect me because I'm an adult, okay, fine. These are your classmates. I do expect you to respect your classmates, and I'll police that, but there'll be half the class, and then the other, they go on the points, we start them on the points of the Union Jack, and I just say, go. And they start walking, and then you start to see drama happen, because two people will walk up to each other, and one has to turn because you can't walk around, and you could get a screaming match until somebody gives way. But lots of little dramas start to happen, and I found it helps to focus them because they can't speak. They have to just observe body language, and that's what kept me from slitting my wrists, teaching that middle school class.
Nice. I think that might be a good place to actually bring it home. I feel like you were done. Was that accurate?
Oh,
yeah. So, thank you all. Was that helpful?
I'm going to talk to some more of you guys.
Yes. Yeah, and I actually have some,
Yeah.
I have a feeling a lot of us are going to come talk to you. But I just want to say thank you all. I just love learning from each and every one of you. It's just such a joyful thing for me, so thank you. And I'm not actually, who's next?
I'm next. I
You're
think.
next. Yeah, I think you are. Fabulous.